WolfPunch.
Usually the team that scores the most points is the one that ends up winning. You guys never heard that shit?
I did not know that.
You sound like Swedish chefs. Yes.
He really does.
Hurty burgers.
Hurty burger. Well, we're WolfPunch.
Oh,
so,
sure are.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yes.
We're five dudes that sit around and don't have any qualifications to talk about movies, but we do.
Hey.
Hey.
We're a little bit. I do a little
He does a little bit.
Dan does a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for the most part, we don't want to say that one is better than the other, so we're five guys with no qualifications.
Exactly.
I'm the best. Like Love from Blade Runner 2049.
Speaking of which
is one of the two movies we're talking about this week on WolfPunch Super Bowl edition. Da-da-da, da-da-da.
Oh my god.
I thought we were all going to do that.
No, I chose not to.
I thought we agreed not to.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're talking about Blade Runner.
You were out of the room.
Oh,
No.
shit.
Yeah. Well, question. Does anyone, when they hear the name Tom Brady, just imagine Peyton Manning? Because that's...
What?
I don't know what Tom Brady looks like. Some people say Tom Brady. I picture Peyton Manning.
They're all white guys.
You know what?
Yeah, it's racist.
I kind of do too. You do? Yeah, I think so.
Not at all.
Why the fuck are we talking about this?
Anyway, this week we're talking about Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. The Blade Runner
edition.
Almost a trilogy. Two-logy.
Well, if we count the 1998 motion picture Soldier, written by David Peoples, to take place in the same universe, starring Mr. Kurt Russell.
And the short films that led up to 2049
And the
that
short
I don't
films.
think anyone saw.
I watched two of them.
I watched them. They were good.
I did
But I
not
didn't
watch
watch
any
it,
of
So
them.
I saw the third one. But
Yeah,
Anyway.
let me guess, you watched the anime one, didn't you?
anime's so good, man.
Classic. Which reminds us, that's who we have here today. We got the full wolf pack. We've got beady-eyed pervert and country music enthusiast Zane Parmenter.
Or Grover.
We have Game of Thrones fan theorist and social justice warrior Yazin.
and Fiji Water spokesperson.
That's right, yeah.
No, he is not.
Kill yourself.
Well, he's working his way
I'm
up.
working my way.
We have Weeaboo trash ambassador Dan Hines.
I watch a lot of anime, but I don't like anime that much. Fun fact.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. And then we have comic book aficionado and lover of garbage Michael Kemp.
That's right.
Yeah.
You forgot accidental Kevin Smith impersonator Kyle Miller.
He's me.
That's him.
At least you didn't call me Kyle Woltar like you were going.
Oh yeah, Kyle Woltar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Tom Brady. Hi guys, it's good to be here. I'm Tom Brady.
God damn. You don't even know what Tom Brady sounds like. You just put your hand over your mouth.
You don't even know what he looks
Probably
like.
has like a deep football player voice. All right, so let's get into this.
Let's
talk
get
about
into
Blade
this. So I am very excited. I've been wanting to do this since we did a podcast because talk about Blade Runner a fucking lot. I don't know if anyone has noticed. It's pretty much a staple of any time I go out. I'll just bring up Blade
That's
Runner.
true. You will.
I will, and I'm not sorry.
You should be, though.
And I'm not. So
You are a guy who loves blades.
and running. No, I don't.
No, he doesn't.
I don't have the physique to run. Which is why I'm glad that the movie Blade Runner, that's a very misleading title.
Yes, Wesley Snipes does not show up as a
No,
blade. He
not
does
once.
run at vampires trying to kill them.
Yeah, so
There's actually a lot less running in the second one too.
there is. It's Blade Walker. It's
Blade Walker.
Harrison Ford's always running, but like.
but he's not good at it anymore.
No.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
Was he ever really, though?
Yes, Michael. Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. He was Indiana Jones.
He was
motherfucker.
Indiana Jones. He used to be a terrific physical actor.
That's right.
Until by the time he got to like Air Force One, where he fights all the terrorists by jump hunting. Then guns just fly out of their hands and he wins.
Yeah.
You're just like, fuck it. He's like 50.
He's like, I've thrown enough punches.
Yeah.
I don't need to do it anymore. I can just tackle these guys.
so Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. Okay, yeah. The 1982 cult classic. Directed by Ridley Scott and starring Han Solo. Not a perfect movie, obviously. There's 8 different cuts of it, so it took a while to hit its stride, but it is one of my favorite movies. I don't think I could make like a top 20 list without it, but I'm aware that I'm the only one that feels that strongly about that movie. So we're mostly going to talk about the sequel today. because that's the hip, fresh one that all you kids are into.
And probably didn't go see because it didn't do that well.
No one watched it.
Really?
No,
Yeah, it didn't do that well.
I mean our theater was packed.
Yeah.
Ours was, yeah.
It was a Gateway Film Center.
It was a Gateway Film Center. Gateway Film Center. Hope you're listening.
You sound like a shitty robot that's telling you where to go. On your right will be Gateway Film Center.
Yeah.
Anyway, well,
It's like the future of Blade Runner.
I think it's time to
cells interlinked within cells. Sorry.
All right, well, let's say some more things about Blade Runner.
All
Kyle.
right, Kyle, what do you like so much about Blade Runner?
Oh, okay. Well, so I was watching a few. I was telling you the other night. I don't usually watch reviews or opinions about movies before doing this podcast because I like to keep it pure. I like to be fresh.
Right.
You know?
Original.
But I watched a few. I'm going to gauge fan reactions to this movie, and I watched some stuff, and I was surprised that they were casting a little bit of shade on the original with this, where a lot of positive reviews were saying that 2049 was so much better than the original, and it really brings forward to me they were talking about the original movie's not that unique of a story, and I guess that might be a fair assessment. But what I really like about the original Blade Runner is the way it tells its story. I think that it has some of the best character neutrality that I've ever seen in a movie. Which I guess for anybody listening to this who doesn't know, and I don't know why you wouldn't, but it takes place in the distant future of 2019.
Holy shit, so far away.
So far away. Who could even imagine what it would be like? But I'll tell you, the world has been ravaged by bullshit, and they're colonizing off-world, which is possible by the Tyrell Corporation making genetically modified human slaves called replicants that are stronger and more agile than regular people. And then there are special police that hunt them down if they step out of line. They're called Blade Runners for some reason.
I wonder why that name.
It sounds fucking cool.
It sounds metal as fuck, dude.
It sounds metal as fuck, but
Again,
it makes no sense.
you gotta sell your movie. If it's called Replicant Finder,
Hunter of people that dream of electric sheep.
Yeah.
That's not going to really work.
it just doesn't grab you as much.
I don't want it to grab me.
Yeah, all right. You like to do the grabbing.
Yes,
I guess.
exactly. I am the beady-eyed pervert.
Beady-eyed pervert, yes. So anyway, in this particular movie, we have a new series of replicants that they have their own emotional responses. They become very human-like, and 4 of them fought their way back to Earth, killed a bunch of people, and they're searching for their creator to undo their 4-year lifespan. And so Indiana Jones is a former Blade Runner pulled out of retirement to hunt them down. And that's the plot of the movie.
I'm too old for this shit.
But, at the time he wasn't. Now he's too old for everything.
Even at the time, it feels like he's too old for this shit.
I think that Han Solo's performance in Blade Runner is one of his very best. I think that he's damn good in that movie.
I feel like he could be replaced with a piece of cardboard, though.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You talking about 2 or 1?
Talking about either one.
All right.
Okay, I just got done watching before I came here.
Yeah, okay, fight me right now.
You just got done watching
Blade Runner.
2049.
Both of them.
Oh.
I watched
wow.
2049 first, and then I
Well, so
went
you did a
back
marathon.
to Blade Runner.
So what do you think?
And I think I finally know that I just don't like Harrison Ford's acting.
So you're in the Yezin camp
Yeah.
of just not liking
He's just
Harrison Ford.
not a very good actor.
Here's
I was
where
like, you could replace him. There's so many actors I feel like could have done better in the original Blade Runner than he did.
name 4.
Christian Slater.
Tom Selleck. Patrick Duffy.
Shut up!
David Duchovny.
No, I think that Harrison Ford, aside from his little impression when he's talking to the snake lady, I think that
That was the best part.
all of that aside, I think that he has a damn good performance. I think that a lot of people think that it's very wooden and boring, and I understand that criticism because I think it's very subdued. I think it's very subtle. I think that a lot of it is facial expression more than anything.
Yeah, I would definitely give you that. I feel like it's more reliant on the character itself and not Harrison Ford's actual acting ability. I think it's just the way the character was written and how it was probably directed and how he chose to express that character.
See, but I can agree with that. But then I feel like Ryan Gosling was given similar direction for his character. Because
Well,
he's very
but
stoic.
This is a whole other thing to get
But
into
it's-
because the whole point of 2049 is trying to show Ryan Gosling becoming human or his desire to become more human. That's just an aspect that is completely not within Harrison Ford's character in the first movie.
True.
So I feel like we should save that for like when we further get into that one.
Yeah. But I mean, this does open like one of the big themes in both Blade Runner movies is they discover or they go into themes about what it is to be human, but very specifically in a future where humanity almost doesn't exist. As far as like, it's a very like shallow, bleak, consumerist future where like human empathy and general decency is non-existent. And there's a really good video on YouTube. I took some notes. What's it called? But it's basically talking about all the Kubrick references in Blade Runner. It's by Adrian Castillo AI, I think.
Well, isn't the final shot even?
Well, the original ending,
yeah.
the theatrical release
Yeah.
in 1982 has a different ending, and it uses footage from The Shining in it.
Yes, yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
Kubrick references in
Yeah.
Blade Runner, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I guess Ridley Scott said like two of his biggest influences for the movie were Star Wars and 2001,
Mm-hmm.
and like in 2001, Hal is very emotive and all of the humans aren't, and that's a big theme in Blade Runner. For all intents and purposes, I'm just going to say this right now for anybody listening: all of my arguments for either of these movies, Deckard is human. Every analysis that I throw out is just based off of him being human.
And for people that aren't familiar with the arguments, the final cut, I think it is.
Yeah.
So the whole thing, like Deckard is established as being a human character, blah blah blah. But then in the final cut, because there's multiple different cuts of the film since it was released, it suggests that he himself might be a replicant, an artificial human, and this is a huge point of contention because the director claims that he completely is. The writer says he isn't.
Now, the director claims that he completely is a replicant.
He is a replicant. Yes.
Ridley Scott says he is. Hampton Fancher says he isn't.
Everyone basically,
Ford
Ridley
says he
Scott
isn't.
is the only one that is really like saying like,
Yeah.
no, he's a replicant. He totally is, but it undermines a lot of story beats. It undermines like the whole point of this. I mean, just so much crap.
The character from the original book.
The Deckard in the book is human, but another thing to point out is I personally am not going to reference the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick because we're talking about movies. And not a lot of people that worked on the first movie even read the book, and the ones that did didn't even really like the book. So it was just a jumping off point. Yeah. So these are definitely about the Blade Runner movies. So if there's people actually listening to this podcast and they want comparisons to the novel, fuck off.
We still love you, but
So, and this is getting into spoilers, but Kyle, why do you believe and prefer Deckard to be human?
Well, okay, so one of the contrasts between the two main characters of the first movie is, like I say, like in 2001, the humans are not very emotive, and Hal, the artificial intelligence, is. And that's a big carryover in Blade Runner where Deckard is a human being who's got a horrible drinking problem, he's completely alienated, he's horribly depressed, and he has no real purpose to live. And then he's sort of forced into doing this job to hunt down these replicants. But he doesn't really want to do it, but as he is doing it, you kind of watch, oh, this is a guy mindlessly serving a purpose. He's basically a slave.
Orders.
Yeah, following orders, where we're watching replicants that are doing the exact opposite of that.
They're trying to live.
They're trying to live, so they break away from their protocol. They want their own free lives. And so you're just watching all of these different parallels. And it works so much better if Deckard is a human. If Deckard is a replicant, there's so much of that movie that just becomes literal. Like when Rachel asks him, have you ever taken that empathy test yourself? To me, that's meant to mean like, you're supposed to be human. You're supposed to be the one that feels things. Because I have to prove my emotional response to you because I'm a replicant, but maybe you're the one that's a little fucked up. Basically, the whole ending of the movie when spoilers for the movie that came out in 1982. Sorry if you haven't seen it yet, but at the end of the movie, the last replicant alive, Roy Batty, saves Han Solo's life and gives him like this whole speech. And it's a great moment for both characters because Roy Batty some people look at him as the good guy of the movie or the hero of the movie. And one of the things that I love about Blade Runner is there isn't a hero. You're watching two main characters that need to have an arc, and they come very late in the movie. Because it's like, sure, Roy is just somebody that doesn't want to die, but he's also killing a lot of people to attain this goal. He's not a good person.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the movie that he realizes, like, how precious life is, you know? And then it's an interesting thing to have, like, the supposed villain teach the supposed hero a lesson in the movie.
Protagonist, antagonist.
Protagonist, antagonist, yeah. Hero and villain is too shallow of a term to use because Blade Runner is fucking cool.
So you prefer the idea that Deckard, a human, is learning something about, I guess, life?
It takes an artificial being to teach him about being human.
Yeah, I get it. Well, okay, what's a better message to you? You should be kind to people that are different from you because you might find out that you're just like them, or you should be kind to people who are different than you.
Yeah, but it's a twist. You wouldn't see it.
It's not a twist. It's horseshit. It's absolutely. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well,
he doesn't have any of their attributes.
Yeah.
Like he gets the
He's
shit
an
kicked out of him.
He does have a
all the
rubber
time.
face, though.
All right.
well, let's. I mean, like going forward, like when we get into this becomes relevant again. This question becomes relevant again in 2049.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
it's weird to call 2049 a sequel.
Why?
It is, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't
No.
directly. It's not a direct. It's not a sequel in the sense of like, oh, well, same main character. It's like set in the same world that has some.
No, this is what it is. Sorry, but it doesn't feel like a sequel to you, I think, because it's not doing the same thing that all sequels and reboots are doing right now, where it's
Right.
tell the same story again.
This might be one of the best sequels that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best sequels to come out in a long time.
Are we going to start moving into 2049 now?
We can just-
or-
yes,
Okay,
because
well,
we're gonna
before,
go back and forth a little bit.
before we do that, I feel like everyone else should just give their opinion on Blade Runner, because, I mean, we've heard, like, Kyle's glowing review. He really likes it, cares about it. I don't think everyone else here is quite on the same level. I know I'm personally not. Just what are you guys' feelings of the movie?
Blade Runner is always one of those movies, like, it's visually stunning to me. And I want to like it so much, but every time I see it, I'm just like, that was fine. Like, and like that, like, as far as like the story, like, I don't connect with anything. And I still, it's really frustrating.
I feel like that's the general consensus
Well,
for
it's-
everyone that
it's
doesn't drink the
difficult
Kool-Aid.
because it
like
seems like the movie, like, on a, like the character level is emotionally shallow, especially for the replicants that you're supposed to like empathize with at the end. Like they don't really doesn't give you enough time for them to be developed or care about them. You just see them going about their mission, you see them doing things, and then he learns a lesson in the end and then dies.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of like, you know, a stopgap that keeps people from like really like giving more of an emotional payoff from the story.
So I don't think that that's entirely fair. I think that it's definitely a movie that you have to keep watching to pick up on a lot of subtleties.
I do
This is
feel
my
like-
fifth watch through.
Yeah, but
And even on this one, I was like, because a lot of people suggested, like, oh no, like, pay more attention to the replicants. They're the heroes, like you said. Like some people.
Some people do regardless.
So I was like, let me this time try and watch it from their point of view, and it really didn't
Yeah,
help
but-
at all that way either.
But Michael, aren't you like kind of stupid though?
Whoa.
I mean,
No.
I guess.
It got real somber.
I mean,
Everyone was kind of like,
I
dude, don't
did-
tell him.
Wow, you're a bully.
I am not going back on it. If you come after Blade Runner, I come after you.
So I would say that I do have some similar from that. I think there's a difficulty to empathize with Deckard, and that's one kind of hurdle to get into Blade Runner. But I do think that Blade Runner is a fantastic movie. It feels a little bit dated, is all it is for me. Some things like sort of the relationship between Deckard and Rachel in Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about the weirdly like rapey sexual assault scene. I'm not just talking about that, although that is like a really
That was
dated
weird.
thing. But also, I think the whole
That's romance in the 80s.
the whole there. But like even if we don't talk about that, which there's no reason why we shouldn't, but even if we're not talking about that, I think the entirety of their relationship actually feels a little bit constructed.
Shut up.
Well, we're
Shut
gonna
up.
get into that.
yeah.
I would say it feels a little bit. I don't know. There's not a lot of spark. There's not a lot of chemistry there, and I think that's something that the movie might sort of suffer from. Again, a lot of the ways I think about Blade Runner now is in relation to the sequel. Like compared to maybe the relationship between like Ryan Gosling's character and Joy, there's like a big difference. Like with Harrison Ford and with Deckard and Rachel, you kind of just get the sense that like, oh well, he's the lead and she's like the dame. I'm doing like finger quotes, and so of course, she's gonna have the hots for him. He's gonna have the hot. It has sort of that vibe.
Why didn't you do finger quotes on Dame? That's apt.
Yikes!
It's a film noir. What do you want?
But that's the thing. Like that's an element of film noir that might be a little bit dated for me. But I do think there are elements of Blade Runner that just kind of outdo the original. Or I guess I'll put it this way: the original also has like I guess some more like believable villains. I think
we'll definitely talk about that.
I'll just say it right now. Like the character of Tyrell is actually really, it's very believable that this Tyrell guy is the maker of these replicants, and he's actually has like really like logical and believable motivations. His performance is pretty. I wouldn't say say flat. I think it is a nuanced performance.
He's a guy that says a lot of shitty things with a believable smile on his face.
But I guess the reason I wanted to move into 2049, I think we should just go back and forth a little bit.
We definitely will.
Sure.
Is that the whole is Deckard a replicant thing comes back up because the villain or kind of the villain of 2049, played by Jared Leto, who is really terrible.
He's a bad actor. I don't like him.
I don't want to say he's a bad actor because he was good in Dallas Buyers Club, but I'll say he's usually a bad actor.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's fine.
So I'll agree with you.
Well, you know what? If we're going to get into 2049, maybe we should give a summary of what that is.
We'll just get through this, and then it'll lead into a summary. The reason is that at one point in 2049, spoilers, Deckard's character, who's not the main character, but he's captured by the villain, who's now like a big sort of tycoon, played by Jared Leto. And he sort of implies that like, oh, is it possible that the reason you and Rachel met and fell in love, does it feel a little bit constructed? Is it maybe that it was all planned, like predestined by like your programming or whatever? And so he implies that maybe Deckard is a replicant, and then goes, or maybe not. And then Deckard is like, later he's like, I know what's real.
Yeah, so we talked about that in a joke scenario where it was like, if you were feeling sick and you went to the doctor and you're like, I think I might be sick, and he's like, yeah, maybe you're sick. Maybe you have AIDS. If you're even sick. And then you're like, Jesus, this could have been, why would you even say that?
So I'll say that, like, yeah, I'll give the movie credit. You can give the movie credit for not saying that Deckard is a replicant, but I honestly don't, because I think instead what the movie did is just, like, refuse to take a stance. It just said, like, oh, do you think maybe you're a replicant and the plot of the first movie was just a setup that, like, a big puppet master controlled?
Yeah, it gives you that hint of, like, maybe we would entirely stomp all over the story in the first movie and say that the whole thing was staged for this purpose.
But maybe not.
But maybe I actually kind of like it. Like they're poking they're poking the bear. Like
I feel like that kind of if you're gonna. See the thing. That's one place I'll disagree with you. I don't respect people who poke the bear. Either respect the bear and leave it alone, or get in the fucking cage. Like,
the bears are the fanboys. I have no problem.
I know, but what I'm saying is like,
I'll cage fight any fanboy.
But this thing is like, for me, normally I'll cage fight the fan. I'll get in the cage and do the thing. But if you're just gonna poke, but not like.
Just keep going. I was doing hand gestures. No one saw it.
If you're just kind of like prod at the idea of doing something without actually committing, I actually think that's kind of like actually more cowardly than it is.
Well, here's the thing about that scene. I mean, I obviously don't know for sure because I wasn't on set or privy to all this, but I feel like that whole part was a compromise based on Ridley Scott being Ridley Scott, trying to be like, no, we have to definitively say that he's a replicant, and Denis Villeneuve and everyone else being like, no.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we're going to bring up the idea, we're going to suggest it, we're going to imply it, but we're going to still leave it ambiguous.
Yeah,
so at that point, I don't care.
Yeah, why does Ridley Scott's opinion matter so fucking much?
I agree that that's what that was. I just think the movie is better not doing it at all, probably. But anyway, the reason I jump right to that scene in 2049 because that scene is basically about the idea that Deckard and Rachel, who had that romance in the first one, had a child. And 2049 is essentially about that. So the idea is
give a plot summary. We're getting you just big spoilers.
It's a big spoiler, but
this is a big spoiler.
You're jumping right into it. Okay.
That's actually not the big
It actually
spoiler.
is because that wasn't in none of the marketings. Like,
Basically, the plot of the movie is a spoiler. Spoilers, by the way, in this review.
We should have started
all throughout.
Also, you do not have to yell into the mic.
Oh, I know they did.
You have the loudest voice here.
I know.
Anyway,
I'm the one.
Toss out that plot summary.
here's the summary for Blade Runner 2049. A young Blade Runner's discovery of a long-buried secret leads him to track down former Blade Runner Rick Deckard, who's been missing for 30 years.
I see what they did there because it was buried. It literally was buried. They're smart.
See, I actually don't even
Michael, you are my Toby. All right.
but the thing is, that's not even like a great summary because, like, he doesn't really track down Rick Deckard until like an hour. And
Maybe
a half
we should just tell you the secret of the story. Like you just...
Well, from a marketing perspective, it's like telling you also Harrison Ford's going to be in the Blade Runner sequel. Don't worry.
Yeah, but he doesn't show up to like an hour and 45 minutes in.
But I'm happy that he doesn't.
Yeah.
I agree.
He like showed up at a good moment of the story.
Yeah,
I would have liked less of him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way he was used was great. I think that for him to not even be in the movie would have been fine with me too.
Yeah.
I don't
I think he probably felt the same way.
I'm sure he did. He looks
like
bored.
He didn't even go through wardrobe and makeup in this movie.
He straight up walked on set in that gray T-shirt. Just like, "What's up, guys?
And
I'm here."
that made me so mad. It took me out of the movie the first time I saw it.
Well, he's just walking around in his
If
veins.
you were
I
living
was so-
in like Atomic Wasteland, Las Vegas,
I
I
don't
don't
give a
just be
shit.
wearing a great. Oh, okay, so you'd be like
I don't
wearing
give
like a
a
suit and tie. Be like,
No.
I can't wait till Ryan Gosling gets here,
At
guys.
least give it some sort
I
of
wouldn't even have been wearing
I have my
pants.
Treasure Island coach ready just for him.
But still, I'm just some sort of little frill to make it look a little bit futuristic and fit like everyone else's look. Because every shirt, even the plain T-shirts, everyone else is wearing.
So instead of like a
Looks a
V-neck,
little
you could have
different.
been wearing like a U-neck or something.
Anything.
I don't know
just something.
I know about that guy who was the captain now from Captain Phillips. He wasn't dressed up
Yeah.
super well. Like there are poor people who don't
Yeah.
dress up even in the future.
Wait,
Who's he trying to impress?
The Somali pirate.
I think
but
it's his
what
attitude.
scene
though,
is here?
too.
He plays the guy who can get a horse meat or whatever.
Yeah, the like scans the
When they're
wooden
scanning the
horse.
wooden horse, he's the one that Ryan Gosling is talking to.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's hard to forget
I thought you
that
were
guy.
talking, I thought
I'm
you were
saying,
talking about the guy who was...
Oh, okay. I feel like we need to course correct here a little bit. We get back to the conversation at hand.
So
back.
let me just get into the plot of a little more. So the plot of 2049, you have Ryan Gosling playing K, which is just an abbreviation of his name. And he's a replicant now. This character is definitively a replicant, and he is a replicant who decommissions, retires
Other replicants.
other replicants who are older models.
Usually older models because basically in this future 30 years later, building replicants was outlawed after a while and the Tyrell Corporation went under and then 30 Seconds to Mars, who plays Wallace in this movie, basically like started a new farming technique and a bunch of bullshit and started building replicants that have to obey
They're
it.
the new mega conglomerate that controls all the replicants and basically the world economy.
Yeah.
More or less.
Exactly. And so Blade Runners hunt down older models that have survived who are more disobedient. So this causes Kay to have a very alienated existence of being hated by humans because he's a replicant and being hated by replicants because he kills ones that are out of line.
Like his boss, Claire Underwood, hates him.
Yeah.
but she also
loves him.
She
Yeah,
also
that's
wants
true.
him
Her
inside
too.
of her.
That's kind of like a recurring theme with the female characters in this movie. They kind of hate him, but they also want
Want to bang him? Yeah.
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah. But anyway, so early on in the movie, while he's after fighting Dave Bautista,
Drax the Destroyer.
Yeah, Drax is in this.
Such a little part, but he does so well with it.
That's still
Right. Kay finds some bones, and those bones are of those are Rachel's bones.
Yes.
Right. And then from that, we discover that she had given birth, and she's a replicant. And so again, this isn't a big spoiler. You find this out pretty early.
If you haven't seen the movie, you know nothing.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
It's still technically a spoiler, but it's a huge deal because replicants never had the capabilities to reproduce before.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if they can reproduce on their own, they can be autonomous. They can live like separately from their.
It gives them a whole new form of independence. But also, it's something that Jared Leto's character, who's building all these replicants now, had not been able to perfect. So he wants that information. And so the LAPD is basically trying to prevent a war from breaking out and trying to keep this a secret. So now Ryan Gosling has to find this child and kill it before any of this information gets leaked.
Sure.
And that's essentially the plot of the movie. Someone else talk.
Okay. So like really getting into it because we're halfway through approximately. So the thing about it is like so it becomes like kind of a race to find the child. Ryan Gosling has to find and kill it, and then Wallace and his subordinate, who's his favorite replicant, Love, also wants to find the child, but they want to find the child and like take it apart and use it to create more replicants because Jared Leto wants more slaves.
Yeah,
and that's like one area where the original or the sequel probably isn't as good as the original. Is that I'm gonna say Jared Leto's character is terrible. You walk in, he's this white dude dressed in a kimono or whatever, or like he's dressed like a samurai. I don't know, and he's like he's blind and he's talking about
Yukata, gosh.
Oh, man.
I was going to say bathrobe. He's hanging out in his apartment.
whatever. Point is. He's this guy who like basically he's evil is like whereas Tyrell was kind of like
He's ambitious.
no
In his first scene, he cuts a replicant woman open and leaves her to bleed on the floor.
Yeah,
She's
true.
imperfect.
And he's such a fucking cunt. Where like
he's like I
Jared Leto's being Jared Leto.
He's like-
so believable as that.
yeah, referring to
he's
himself
not.
as God and all of his creations as angels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
he
He
talks-
really is a twat.
he
Yeah.
talks like he talks like
LeBron James calls himself the king. I think Jared Leto on this would refer to himself as God.
I'm gonna throw this out there. He talks like someone writing Final Fantasy fan fiction.
What?
Like what a character, what a villain from like a Final Fantasy game
Oh,
Yeah.
would talk
okay.
like.
All right.
I like
But if
that
written
kind
by
of-
like a
I like that dialogue. It's cool. I mean,
Oh,
enough
man.
with you. Okay,
so
so
be the comic book enemy, but I like the biblical references and stuff.
but it's no one talks like that.
Those aren't biblical references,
He's not
Michael.
just anyone.
gods. Yeah.
He's not fucking quoting scripture. He's just like, I'm a god.
He's not
I
quoting
know,
scripture.
but
He's
it's like-
creating.
He's oh my Jesus Christ. He's the Dennis Reynolds of 2049.
He is. He's the golden god. No,
He
he's-
really is.
Except it's not played as a joke.
No, it's not. And
Okay, this is one of the big
essentially,
differences.
all right. Before I get that, like, essentially, like, the thing is, like, he wants replicants to be able to reproduce so they can have more of them, so they can have more slaves. Not to like help humanity, like, not to.
He's trying to help humanity.
No, not to
conquer the stars.
No, yeah, but not to increase the quality of life of human beings, just so that humanity as a race can have more to their name, but really that all that is for his ego.
Yeah, see,
How would more slaves not make your life better?
Essentially, he wants. He doesn't really want to help people. He just because of the implication. Okay, the implication of having more territory.
In all honesty, this is a good point. Of like, you could have very easily written it that way. Of like, I need to build more replicants because we need more space. We got to find more planets, more sustainable life. They could have just written it a little easier than like, I've found 9 more worlds, but you could count those on your fingers. I have to conquer the stars. Like he's a fucking James Bond villain.
He's a megalomaniac. It's not
Yeah,
about.
He is, but I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah,
in the
that's
context of the story.
thing that
Well, okay,
exists.
like one of the differences between like the original and this new version is
Okay. Before we do that, do you think Tyrell was a villain in the original Blade Runner?
Yeah.
But he's a believable villain.
Do you think he was meant to be the main villain of that story, though? Set up to be.
No.
Again, he's not the real antagonist. Roy is the antagonist, but I mean, Tyrell is a villain, but it's not really about like heroes and villains.
And you could make the argument that like Love is the main antagonist in 2049
Because she
but,
is.
Yeah.
But I mean, truth be told, like one of the big differences is you're right when you say like Deckard in the original is kind of hard to like empathize with because he's not as easily a likable character. Whereas Kay, there's a bunch of shit that automatically makes you sympathize with it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is Kay's villains are very villainous and Deckard's aren't. I'm just saying that the original Blade Runner, part of what I love about that movie is that it's never like handing you anything. It's not spoon feeding you morality as much as
It's just boring you.
yeah. Oh, well, fuck you. He agreed.
I would say that Kay's villains are much more villainous, but Jared Leto, Kay's villain, is villainous in a cartoony way. Love is actually villainous in like a really compelling way.
Yeah, Love is a great character. I like her a lot.
One of the arguably the most well-performed character in this movie.
In the whole movie.
Yeah, maybe I gotta say though, upon
Ryan
rewatching, Ryan Gosling is actually really fucking good.
He kills it, but I'm gonna give it overall. I'm still gonna give it to Love for like what little she has. Buddy, don't know it. She just knocks it out of the park in every scene. She's like very volatile and like violent and conflicted, yet at the same time like also like there's just like her emotions are just boiling over the whole time.
I think,
And it's in a way that, to me, even, like, outdoes, like, Rutger Hauer's performance.
yeah.
Even the performances of the first movie.
See, now this is the problem. This is the problem. I really wanted to talk about Blade Runner 2049 because I really, really liked it. Upon the second viewing, I liked it even more the second time. If we redid our top 5 lists, it would be maybe number 2 or 3 for me.
Oh, wow.
But
it would be on mine.
now I feel like I'm just in a frame of mind to shit talk it because you guys keep saying why it's better than the original and you're fucked up.
I didn't say that. I just said there are ways in which it's better than the original, there are ways in which the original is better. And I think one way in which it's better than the original is a couple of these performances, mainly like Love's performance and I would say Kay's performance. I'd say Kay's performance is better than Deckard's, but not by a whole lot. Just that Kay is a more likable character, which we've said. I would say that Joy's performance is better than Rachel's performance, and I would say that Love's performance is actually better than the replicants of the first one. But not that the replicants of the first one.
Rutger Hauer is so good in
He
Blade
is.
Runner.
I know.
Yeah, we're not
But
saying
Love,
that.
and I'm not saying he's bad. I'm saying that's just how good.
Harrison Ford's
Elsa
Hoax.
You are stupid.
Elsa Hoax.
Sylvia. Why?
Sylvia. Yeah.
It's just, I figured it was like a Nordic sounding name.
Sure.
But guys,
Elsa Hoax is a model, actually. Okay. Anyway.
From Frozen.
What?
Yeah, from Frozen. Okay,
Whoa.
so now I'm going to talk about Joy.
well, I think we're talking about Joy. We also probably need to talk about the bigger themes of Blade Runner,
Okay.
which is sentience of these like replicants, and
True.
stuff like that. I mean, that's a big thing that
Now,
Blade Runner
see,
plays with.
I was
and I
hoping.
think 2049 does a great job.
Sure, it does, Michael. And this is where you and I agree. I was so hoping that this episode would be very, like, nuanced and we would be elevating it. But we're going to get into this conversation. I'm just going to start screaming at Zane because I've had so many, granted, alcohol-involved conversations with
That's
him where
true.
he's
Yeah.
just a replicant racist.
I am.
He just
I am.
refuses to
So
acknowledge
just,
that they're
just to clarify, Zane, you don't believe that replicants are people.
No.
No. And we had this conversation earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Earlier in the week, you were driving me insane.
I don't think they are.
So ignorant.
They're created in a lab and not in. I
So
don't know.
even if they can have
Not by
names-
God.
Not by God. No, they're not. It's
Well,
like
they are
it's
created by
not
God.
like
Jared Leto.
Don't even joke about that.
I guess
I'm the devil of the universe where Jared Leto was God.
it's not like a. I don't know. It's like not.
They're not
flesh and
natural.
blood. Yeah,
even.
natural.
So you're saying you'd feel fine owning replicant slaves?
I'm saying I wouldn't own them. I wouldn't even be involved with it because
I wouldn't even
be like,
acknowledge their existence.
No, Zane does bring up a point. I'm curious. So the people that do think that replicants are people, what about Joy? Because the movie does do a really good job.
Okay, so let's
like,
explain what joy is.
Joy is essentially like almost like Siri if she was like in hologram.
She's your
form.
virtual girlfriend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's like her and like Siri, but
bang.
She's a hologram.
All right, essentially, let's just go into this. So, Kay, one really excellent part of the movie, and it leads to other excellent parts of the movie, is when Kay comes home, you find that his life is very isolated and simple. He has a small apartment. It's almost like a box. I mean, not quite like a box, but it's very, very small.
yeah.
Where he plugs into the wall and charges it.
Essentially, he has this like woman talking to him through the walls, and then you find out that it's like an AI that is essentially just like his Siri or Alexa or whatever.
Yeah.
And it appears inside the house like a hologram that sort of like acts like his loving wife. And so immediately you have to question like, well, how real is this? Is this just like a program? Or, I mean, it is, but like, how real is this virtual thing?
How sentient.
Yeah.
How sentient is she?
Because the way she talks really makes you think that she is.
And he gets her, I mean, he says he gets her, but it's also for himself. Essentially, it's called like not an emulator, or an adapter. It's basically a flash drive that lets him like have her outside.
Yeah, because in the apartment she's like on a track system, so she can only stay in the apartment.
Yeah.
So this thing that he bought.
Now, what's the actress's name?
Anna de Armas.
Anna de Armas. Well, she plays it really well.
She's really, really good in this.
Yeah, she's very good. One of my and
easy
honestly,
on the eyes.
True, and honestly, one of my favorite parts of this movie is that you find out that Kay is this guy who he's a replicant. So there's automatically this question hanging there of like, how real is he? Since he's like a created life form. I would say that the movie doesn't really hinge too much on that. Like you believe the movie assumes right off the bat that replicants are real. They have empathy. They have sentience. So they're real. They feel pain. They have choice. Whatever.
Yeah, despite what Zane thinks, for all intents and purposes, they are.
Sure, they feel pain, whatever, but they're not like you and me. They're not.
Or they're more like us.
No.
They are.
Anyway.
They are.
Anyway. But the thing is, but the fact that he has joy, and later the movie points out, like when he's like approached by like essentially, I think sex workers who are trying to get information from him, but essentially they approach him and they find out that like, oh, he's not interested in real women. He's actually
that happens to him a lot in the movie. You should put that thing on mute.
He's actually. Particularly, he's like almost like in a monogamous relationship with this hologram woman, and so you question like he is a created entity, like he's a created life form that is real and feels pain and has sentience. So you have to question like, well, how real is joy? And I think that's a movie that that's a question that the movie goes. Oh, it doesn't really directly ask, but it's kind of there in the subtext of the movie. And it's a question I wish the movie did more with, because I thought it was one of the most fascinating things about this movie was
I think it answered it in a way.
I agree with Michael.
In a similar way to the Jared Leto question. Like,
Similar.
well, like I'm saying, like there's that scene where that giant pink blue hologram shows up
That
and
part's awesome.
calls him Joe and says, I forget what line she says, but it's a line that he thought was a personal line for him.
Yeah,
and
that's
it
true.
wasn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that basically
Okay,
makes it seem
And
like
even before
the movie's
that,
telling
there was a
actually-
scene where the actress who plays I forget the hologram, like you see her in an advertisement just like outside floating up. So like repeatedly, like it puts this in your mind that like, oh, it seems like a real legitimate loving like relationship, even though it's artificial, but it's also having you question like the validity of actually, is it real if it's still just programmed and like numbers. But I feel like it does definitively answer that, because that's kind of the driving point that brings Joe, Kay, whatever you want to call his character's name, to make the final decision in the last act of the film.
Yeah.
But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves right there.
Sure.
Well, I'm aware of that scene, and I do realize that scene kind of tilts it in the direction of like, well, maybe it's not that real. But I actually don't know that that's definitive.
Yeah,
What would
leaves
you
it.
have wanted them to do with that?
Well, hold on. Like, I mean, it leaves it pretty open to interpretation. I think that, yeah, I would agree. It kind of leans more on the "this was never real" thing.
Yeah.
But there are like a lot of clues throughout the movie. Like when I was first watching this, I was like, "Yeah, this is unhealthy, dude. This is not a real relationship." And like when he first takes her outside, she says something like, "I'm so happy when I'm with you," and he's like, "You don't have to say that."
Yeah.
Like where you get the implication, like he knows that this isn't real. Whenever she says stuff like that,
Yeah.
it kind of creeps him out.
Yeah.
But there are also just like other things that almost make you feel like maybe everything is up to like question.
Yeah.
Where like when he thinks that he, eventually in the movie he thinks he has reason to believe that he is the child of Deckard and Rachel. So he thinks that he was born, and Joy is pretty excited for him. She becomes his hype man, and she like then decides like, oh, this hooker that you were talking to, you really liked. I could tell you liked her. So we're gonna have a threesome that happens in the movie, and that leads you to wonder like
That
So
part's
is it-
crazy, by the way.
Oh, it's
Like,
insane.
it's
like one of the best.
visually, it's crazy.
Of course
It's
you
not-
love the
no.
threesome, Zane.
No,
BDI purpose.
but yeah, true, BDI purpose.
Okay,
but,
yes, I get it. I haven't spoken up a whole lot, and this is the time that I choose to.
Yeah.
But it was insanely.
It was probably my favorite
It's
scene.
one of
It was
the best
insane.
scenes. But I mean, like, it leaves you to question, like, is this just part of her programming where it's like, oh, I could tell this is something that he liked, or does she have like some longing to make a physical connection with him? Just like at the end when he goes on the lam, she's like, "Take me with you."
Yeah.
Is that because she's like programmed to always want to be with him, or like she's when he's like, "Well, if my flash drive breaks, you're dead forever." She's like just like a real girl, and it makes you wonder, like, is she sentient? And does she have a desire to be real, or
Yeah.
is she just saying her programming?
Yeah.
And then there's like throughout both movies, what?
I don't know if you're going, because I'm going to get into a point and I'm realizing it's going to be really contentious.
So throughout both movies, there's a lot of eye symbolism. More so in the first one, they do a lot with eyes. It's like a visual cue. Like in the first movie, replicants have these reflective eyes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of symbolism for like their reflection of humanity. And then in this movie, Jared Leto, who's just a soulless piece of shit, has these big cataracts over his eyes. He's blind. He doesn't see the word like. And then it's kind of a little bit of a carryover when the big hologram of Joy calls him Joe and just completely emotionally crushes the audience and the main character.
Oh yeah.
Her eyes are completely black.
Mm-hmm.
There's just nothing there.
Yeah.
Whereas like throughout the movie, like she's been virtually the only positive voice in this entire film where everybody is depressed or dead inside or shitty.
Yeah.
She has these big soulful eyes, and then her big hologram, they're just blacked out.
True.
I like that you said virtually.
I guess the only reason, and the thing is, yeah, it really might be that Joy was never real, or never real in any way to begin with.
Zane certainly doesn't think so.
No.
But he would be the first
And
one
I
to
mean-
buy one.
And you're right. And just to throw this out, so I mean, just to throw this out there, Joy is spelled Joi, which is a type of porn. So this. Oh, sure. Yeah, you don't know that.
No, but for real, what? I don't.
Oh,
I really don't.
So Joy stands for jerk off instruction.
I already know how to do that, though.
Yeah, you need to be
So
told how to do
anyway,
it.
point is,
You definitely don't need to.
the reason I actually don't like the idea that Joy is totally not, because I don't think that it's inherently, because I don't think she inherently has to be not real. Essentially, the idea that like, oh well, she's just code. Well, DNA is code. Like
Sure.
if you really boil down, and the movie actually says it, like she's talking like, oh, everything that constructs human beings is four symbols, like so essentially four I don't know what, like
It was
four
like
genetic,
Yeah.
four genes, like
We're
four
just
letters.
living computers, and
Yeah.
God is the Bill Gates of the universe.
and then she's like, well, I'm only 2, and he's like, well, it's more elegant. So the idea that you could create a sentient and real presence with code isn't untrue, and it's not beyond the potential of this universe, and it's not something that hasn't been done before. Like, we see like a movie like Her, like that is about Her is an AI, but it is real. It does feel, and just a different kind of life. So I think that question about joy was really interesting, and I don't think the movie did enough with it.
Oh, I completely disagree with you on that.
The movie,
Yeah, like I was just gonna say, like if they do too much of that, then like the easiest way to integrate more of joy into this plot, which is what I fully expected the first time around, was she's a product of Jared Leto's corporation,
right?
And I thought that eventually, like
She's gonna betray him.
she was gonna betray him, or like they were going to hack her.
Yeah, they
Computer
were tracking
bullshit.
him, though.
Were they trying?
They were used because when he broke that antenna, like you saw on
Yeah.
Love's screen, that they
Yeah.
couldn't see where he was anymore.
So it was like I thought that they would just be able to like take information from her, or she would give information to them. But I thought like she was a very perfect part of the story. I think that like it's as ambiguous as it can be, or even as ambiguous as it should be.
I think it's good for this story. She was in it the perfect amount, but I also would love to see a movie that was just about the two of them, which probably
So you would like to see her?
I've never seen her, so it's probably that movie.
We should move on.
Well, they made a movie called Joy with Jennifer Lawrence.
We should move on because we're getting pretty long on time. But the one thing I'll say is that like I think that
who cares?
I think that it's a good. My second watch through, I'm not as critical about the amount that Joy's in it, and I do think essentially she almost has to die for the movie to end the way it does. Which, spoiler alert, she does.
You said that after you said that she died.
Well, I said she almost has to die for the movie to end. It doesn't mean she did.
Wow.
Anyway, point is, I think even though it's almost the right amount, I just do think that it left something to be desired, and that's why I look at this movie and I think it's a great part of Kay's story, but I wish more time had been spent just developing that relationship and developing the different levels of what can be real. Because to me, the difference between joy and the replicants isn't that, is joy just a code or is it not? Because I think everyone is code. I think the difference is
Pretentious.
Sorry. Well, the difference is that, joy is more limited in her choices. And how does that limitation in her choices of, where is she allowed to go? What is she allowed to do and be?
I don't think they need
who
to
is she allowed to
show
love?
any more of her because this movie was already 2 hours and 44 minutes long. And
I'm saying
they added more of that.
I'm saying they should have cut some other stuff out, and now we're going to get into Harrison Ford. I think that Harrison Ford's role in this, he's okay. I'm not saying his performance is necessarily bad, but I don't think it's great. I don't think he's playing Deckard. He's just playing old guy who's a dad who's trying to do right by his kid. And his part kind of just drags on a little bit. I wish it had been shorter.
Kyle's just
and I'm also going to say
he's right.
And well, the scene where he's again, we're coming back to it. The scene where he's taken by Jared Leto, and then they show the copy of Rachel to him, and they really romanticize that relationship a whole lot because the
eyes were green.
Yeah, the audience remembers that was the happy ending of the first one, so let's romanticize it a bunch. And I don't think that really works, and especially doesn't work if you take it.
No, I would say a lot of the worst parts about 2049 are the winks references or over romanticizing of the previous film.
Yeah.
I also hate the little bit in when he finds Edward James Olmos and he's interviewing him.
Yeah.
It's I don't hate that entire scene, but there's a line where he's I always felt like he wasn't long for this world. And he's like, what makes you say that? And he goes, something in his eyes. And it's is that because he there was that glint in his eyes, he might be a replicant, he should be dead by now because he was. And it's fuck that.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Also, Robin Wright isn't good in this movie.
Robin Wright isn't
I thought she was
great.
fine.
I think she's
You
okay.
leave Claire Underwood alone.
No, I think Robin Wright is bad in this movie. She has bad line deliveries. She's
I disagree.
my favorite part was the part where she was being killed.
That was a good part.
I would agree with that.
not because I hate her, but because it was actually the best scene she did.
For love scene.
That's also one of the best scenes for Love.
Yeah.
That was the best love scene.
Yeah,
of the
when
whole-
love dies.
Oh God.
No, I don't think that there are actually like bad performances in this movie. I think that a lot of people are coming down real hard on Han Solo because he is Han Solo. He's Indiana Jones. He's this big, iconic actor, and he's had a history lately of not giving a fuck. But I feel like he's not notably bad in this movie.
Nah.
I think that people.
he's
It's
not
not his
notably
worst
bad.
performance yet. It took me out of the movie.
Whoa, really? I would not.
Oh,
Did you
I
see
actually
Indiana
would
Jones
not
4?
go with
Did you
that.
see the Force Awakens?
It's fucking trash.
You know what?
This was
Bad.
worse than Force Awakens.
I'm actually going to say that I don't think that his performance in Crystal Skull is the big problem either.
I think it's kind of a problem because
Yeah, there's too
your
many other
main
bad
hero.
things going on.
Well, there's so many bad things in that movie, but your main hero is just like he's old, and it's not like to be ageist or anything. It's
But
just
you
like,
are.
but like this guy is supposed to be globetrotting and like kicking ass and shit, and he's just like barely getting through it, like he forgot his walker or something. So I don't know.
Anyway, we're
You try hauling a walker through the jungle, you fuck.
anyway. I would say that it's not that his performance is bad. It's just that like I think his performance is just okay. Like,
Yeah,
it's not.
fine.
It's not something I'm not there for Han Solo's performance. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm there for Ryan Gosling's performance and joy and love and
Peace and harmony.
yeah, it's weird they give the characters confusing names like that.
That's
But like,
good.
yeah, those
No, it
three
wasn't.
those three characters really knock it out of the park. And then like comparatively, like Jared Leto, I think is just awful, and I think
You see,
Robin
I
Wright
disagree with
and
that.
I don't think that Jared Leto is awful. I think one thing that's important to note, which is like my favorite
okay.
thing about when we went and saw this movie, was Yezin didn't realize the first time he watched this that Jared Leto was blind. And so like I laughed so hard about that later when I was like, so he's just watching a movie where Jared Leto was like cocking his head weird and rubbing everyone, and he has no idea why.
To that point, I swear, the scene with, again, Harrison Ford and Jared Leto, when Jared Leto grabs Harrison Ford's hands, I feel like that was like when their actual in real life first.
Yeah, it looks like Harrison Ford did not expect it.
He's like, oh, why are you touching me?
This little fruit cup. What's he doing?
Oh my God, I was dying.
anyway, I feel like we're at a point. We should talk about like sort of like that central like arc that Kay goes through.
Yeah.
Where spoilers if you haven't gotten it already. Kay starts out this movie hunting down Blade Runners. Then he finds out that one...
He is a Blade Runner.
Or sorry, hunting down replicants. And he finds out there is this replicant that was born. And then as he's looking for the replicant that was born, he starts to notice similarities in...
But if it's
the
born,
backstory.
can we even call it a replicant?
Right, well, whatever. The child born
Yes,
of
you would.
the child born of a replicant. The child born of a replicant and a maybe replicant, maybe not replicant.
He's human.
Okay.
He's a child.
Anyway,
Wait, who?
so as Kay is trying to discover like, well, what is the story? Like, what is this person's like, who is this person? He's trying to find them. He just knows similarities between its life and his, and he starts to think, oh my gosh, it's me.
It's me.
I'm the child, and he even finds the person who makes all the false memories that are given to replicants, and he asks her point blank, like, is this memory that I have that is apparently also the child's, is it real? And she tells him yes, and so then he realizes, oh, I'm the chosen one, essentially. He realizes that he's the special child, and that sort of informs his arc, and that's why he goes to find Harrison Ford, because he thinks
Space Dad.
He was an
he
actual
thinks-
detective in this movie,
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
Which
he
was
thinks
like
that-
good.
yeah,
Yeah, no.
it's just like a sequel of The Nice Guys.
This is part of why. Shut up.
This is why I like 2049 more than the original Blade Runner,
Oh.
because
Deckard is definitely a detective. in this
sure
movie.
he is, but it like I don't. it's not
like the
engaging.
difference. The difference between like the detective work in the first movie is there isn't really a mystery.
Yeah.
He's just hunting people down, but you do watch him do detective work to find them.
It was riveting stuff.
Shut
Enhance.
your fucking
God,
mouth.
at a certain point, you have to accept that nobody likes Deckard.
I don't care if you like that. I'm talking shit about
We're not talking shit about the movie. We're just saying nobody likes Deckard.
He called it boring and he's stupid. I hate you fuckers. But okay, so in 2049, like I admit that like when Deckard shows up, that's when the movie starts to fall apart a little bit. Not specifically because of his involvement in the movie. It's just the first like 3/4 of the movie are like a very, very fucking good detective story.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of why like me and Dan were like, oh, you're fucking spoilers over here, is because like the whole way that plot unfolds is great.
It's really good.
It starts off with him fighting Drax the Destroyer, which, by the way, if you watch the special features on the Blade Runner DVD, like in the original draft of Hampton Fancher's script, that scene was in there. You could actually see storyboards from it when they originally wanted Robert Mitchum to play Deckard, and he's got like a hat on instead. Anyway, so it was cool to see that scene, and then like you find this box of bones. You find out, oh, this was a woman who died giving birth.
Blah, blah, blah,
Oh, she was
blah,
young, yada,
Yeah, but you do.
And,
I'm just saying you find that out probably 25 minutes later.
Sure. Let's not get into why that was or wasn't a spoiler. I'm just saying, like, the plot is gradually unfolding, and then you think, oh, he's going to be the child. There are all these clues as to why he's the child. And you're like, of course, because
it's so obvious that it's almost too obvious.
Yeah, and it's like, see, I wouldn't say that it's like so obvious that it's too obvious, just because like the movie's not dumb, but if you've seen movies before, you're like, yeah, this is probably where it's going to go.
It's suggesting, but not overly telegraphing.
Yeah. And then
they start just telling you. Then he
finds
out.
Then he comes to the realization, and that's really cool because it's nothing nice for him. It's like it's not the Matrix where it's like you're the one, and now you're gonna do a bunch of training.
He's
like
very, very visibly upset.
Yeah.
And, like screams when he finds out.
He's terrified because now like
he's gonna be hunted.
He's going to be killed just for being what
his whole mission was to wipe out all traces of this child existing, and now he finds out like, oh sweet, like I'm just gonna be hunted my whole life. For this, like this is terrible.
And then you get, like, Joy, just, like, egging him on, like, no, this is great, you're a real boy now. Look at you.
Go,
I'm gonna name you Joe instead of K, dash, fuck, shit, piss. Because you're gonna have a real name. And it's just really, really nice. He fails his baseline test, which was sweet.
Yeah, I love that baseline test.
Oh, God, it's such a cool part. I keep YouTubing that. I'm like,
so great.
I don't have a very interesting life.
Obviously.
So once he like goes and finds who he believes to be his father, and he's talking to Indiana Jones, just a little bit of the structure kind of slips away. Where like the Wallace people find him, they capture Harrison Ford, they don't kill Kay. Though admittedly, the director did say in an interview where like that scene went on longer, where she like really did some prolonged damage to him to help emphasize that she assumed he would die. But then like as soon as they capture Indiana Jones, then like the good guy Replicant Resistance shows up and saves our hero, and then we get the Replicant Resistance scene, which just feels like it was written and directed by Joss Whedon, and I mean that in the most insulting way possible.
We're insulting it.
And it's like really like subtle, nuanced, like adult detective film, like all about this, like very thematic and meditative on like what it is to be human. Now we all of a sudden we have a whole resistance group showing up late in the third act, telling the main character, we're going to, like, overthrow the government, and we're going to find this child, and she's going to be our leader, and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah. The good version of iRobot.
I know, it's like, yeah, we just need to find her. And he's like, you mean him, right?
You mean me.
He's like, no, shit. It's like, no, it was
You're wrong.
Dude.
No, I got a wiener.
Anyway.
We're, of course,
gender identity
all like
is
the
wiener, right?
Anyway, without assuming Kay's not her, and we find out suddenly that the chosen one, the child. So this whole time that Ryan Gosling had met Harrison Ford, or Kay had met Deckard, he thinks he's talking to his father. Then after that, he finds out, no, the child's not him.
Our hero comes to the realization that he's not special in any way.
The memories he had,
just like you,
just like
the memories.
That's why I like the movie.
The memories he had were real; they just weren't really his, and they were given to him by.
So he's fake. He's not a real fucker.
No fucker. See, like, oh god, this is a whole other conversation.
He's not real.
Okay, so
He's real.
He's real, but he's not a fucking person.
No, see, one of the interesting themes about like both movies is kind of like how memories form who we are, much like us in real life.
Sure.
And it's part of like why replicants in this world, like the newer Wallace replicants, have their own fake memories to help form their own unique personality. It's kind of like why he's worried about losing Joy, is like whether or not she's real. It's kind of like how, you know, Spotify recommends songs based off your listening history. All of her data is like very specific memories saved. So it's like you could go buy a new one, but it wouldn't be the same thing. You're so short-sighted.
I'm saying that my memories are not programmed into my head.
If you got amnesia, would you stop being real?
Would you be the same person if you forgot everything about your past?
I mean, that'd be me, but I wouldn't be.
But you wouldn't be
how I am now. But yeah, no. But
be less obnoxious.
We'll say that for our review of the Anna Faris movie that's coming out.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, that like original film.
Overboard. Yeah.
You went overboard there, Kim.
Back to the third act of Blade Runner 2049.
All right, Back to the Future. So in the third act of 2049, yeah, it does sort of fall apart. You get the scene where the replicant resistance announces their plan to him, and then as, like, I shit you not, as the leader, this older lady is like telling him the plan, like there is like hundreds of us, and then they
just swarm out of the darkness.
They just walk out of the darkness like they like she told them, hey, all you guys hide there in the dark so we can't see us.
It's gonna look really cool.
It's gonna really cool
when a bunch of us,
and then you guys are all gonna come out together. And it's like, no, it feels like a play.
It's very very cheesy. And then the other girl goes, more human than human, and you're like, hey, what is that? Like,
it's like, hey, you're that girl from Threesome.
See, yeah, but dude, I told you.
Felt very out of place in the movie.
Yeah.
And that's also when it establishes that Joe has to then go kill Deckard because he's the only link that can lead Wallace back to the Resistance and then stop the Resistance.
It's like
Deckard is being taken off war.
That's just another thing that really
that's another
is the fact
thing.
So Jared Leto has captured Deckard, and he's trying to find out, like, well, you don't know a lot of things, but you know about the Resistance. Tell me about them. He's like, I'm not going to tell you. Like, all right, well, we're going to torture you off-world. And that's basically, well, why are you torturing him off-world? Why don't you just have it, like, back in your super evil corporate megastructure in a basement or something?
And it's basically like, well, we need to write a confrontation that doesn't involve Jared Leto, our phenomenal villain, in case we want to use him in potential sequels. Or something.
He would have been so great in an action scene with those blind eyes.
It's just like your audience listening.
Let me feel your face before I stab you. Hang on.
For everyone who can't see what's happening, which is all of you, you're all Jared Leto. I was miming him blindly fight. Not as nuanced as Daredevil.
I wish they could have just been like transfer him like off-site to another facility or something, and then you could have accepted him. But it's like, no, we gotta get back to Mars for some fucking reason.
Right, but I don't think that detracts from the movie.
No, it's a nitpick, but
it
seems like a glaring nitpick to me.
It's
a nitpick. I took it as, for legal reasons, maybe he couldn't torture, even though he's doing fucking things.
I just assumed that they did. I just assumed that the process of taking him off world wasn't that challenging.
Yeah.
You know, I just assumed that, like, oh, well, it's not hard to take someone off world.
I think it was the 1-2 punch of, like, hey, we're the Resistance here to, like, free all the replicants and make everything good for the oppressed slaves, and also...
like, in all honesty, the third act of the movie is not that bad. It's where all of the cheesiest parts are. Because, like, I'm fine conceptually with the replicant resistance, and I like that they tell Kay, you've got to kill Indiana Jones or else this whole thing's fucked. And he comes to his own conclusion of, like, rescuing him and, like, not really doing what the Resistance wants, and then reuniting Han Solo with his daughter, Shia LaBeouf. It was one of my...
His daughter is not played by Shia LaBeouf.
Well, that was an Indiana Jones joke.
Oh.
Yeah, over your head.
Over my head,
I got it. I was picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah,
Thank
you were...
my least favorite person got the joke.
I got it. I just knew it wasn't funny.
I do want to talk about how greatly understated the final confrontation was. Like, it wasn't some big, like, in these kind of bigger movies, so it's just like...
It wasn't like a fist fight on top of a skyscraper.
Yeah,
It was hanging
like,
off the edge.
It wasn't
it-
Spider-Man fighting on a fucking plane.
Oh, that's a good movie.
Shut
We're
up.
not talking
Spider-Man
about
Homecoming?
Spider-Man. It's essentially, Kay takes down the ship that's taking Deckard off-world, and it falls into, like, the water sort of, like, on the shore of something, like a metal shore, and so then he shoots the driver, and then him and Love, the really cool android,
The evil fembot, yeah.
the evil replicant lady who's awesome, have like a fist fight, and meanwhile Deckard is just sort of like
There's a lot of kicking.
sort of a kick fight.
He's
And
handcuffed and
Deckard is handcuffed and drowning the whole time. Doesn't help.
And I swear that's in Harrison Ford's contract. It's like, I don't want to fight. Just handcuff me so I don't have to do anything.
How cool would it be if we had like an action scene, but I sit down the whole time? What do you say?
I mean, to be fair, he's almost drowning half the time.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there is some effort on his part.
Right. So anyway, so
breathe.
they fight. Love appears to win. And then she's just like, I'm the best. And I'm like, yeah, you are. And then she goes, and then she's about to take what's-his-face off-world. And then Kay shows up and strangles her to death. And after that, Kay takes Deckard back to the place where they make the memories, where he has figured out, through his detective skills, that the replicant girl, or the girl that makes the memories, is actually the daughter of Harrison Ford and Rachel.
Bum bum bum.
And I will say that the scene where earlier where he meets her, where Kay meets the girl who makes the memories, and he talks to her while she's like sort of CGI constructing these memories, which actually looks really cool.
Oh yeah,
right.
It looks. This movie, we haven't said it enough. The movie looks phenomenal, and we don't
Yeah.
say that about a lot of movies.
Yeah, this is like
gorgeous.
the perfect spectacle movie to me, where it's like you see where the budget of this movie went all the time, and it's not big, ugly, horrific, disgusting
It's not
CGI.
Stick with me for a second here, but it reminds me a lot of A New Hope in the aspect that every scene has something like, I don't want to say a gimmick because that sounds like a little too common kind of something, but there's some like kind of like future tech element or some world building element
Yes.
that grabs your attention and like you just can't help but like think about. Like
Yeah, that's
true.
exactly what I was going to say. Like everything, like every
Everything,
spectacle informs the world around you.
right?
Yeah.
Everything from like the holograms in Vegas to the digital threesome to the memory.
Just seeing her
construction.
like designing the bug in the memory, I was like, this is so fucking cool.
No, and it's great. And so in that last scene, Deckard, a dying Kay, brings Deckard to meet his daughter. And I think that's actually a really good moment there.
I thought the ending was great.
It's like a near perfect ending.
Yeah, I was sitting there watching it in the theater, and I felt like
You were gonna cry.
I was a little emotionally moved.
Aw.
And then the credits roll, and then there's some guy sitting up behind me who goes, "That's it? You fucking sucked!"
Oh, I remember that. I was so pissed.
And I was like, "This is what's wrong with the world."
Yeah, if you talk in a movie theater at the end of the movie or whatever, like, go fuck yourself.
And if
You're the
you
worst.
didn't like Blade Runner 2049, maybe kill yourself.
I wouldn't say that. No, I don't.
I wouldn't say that.
I said maybe. You always have options.
Yes. Anyway, but I thought it was good that Kay decided that he was going to by thinking that he was the chosen one, by thinking that he was the special child, he saw what that would mean to someone else, and he realized like what it meant to have like a reunion with your parent, and even after he realized that it's not him, he decided to give that like real and special moment to someone else.
He knew how important that was for him, and so like it was just a great, beautiful little moment.
So at the end, he lays down. I think it's like one of the best. I think it's a better closing shot than the first one. I think it's a better closing shot than a lot of most movies. It's like he's just like laying, or I guess I would compare it not to the closing shot. It's comparable to, and not necessarily better, but it's comparable to the scene where
to the Tears in the Rain.
Tears in the Rain, where Roy is like dying in the rain, and in this he's dying in the snow.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you get that sweet shot of like the snow falling on the blood and like turning red.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
And then he's like, he's a real human being and a real hero.
And if Roger Deakins doesn't get the fucking Oscar for cinematography,
Oh, he was so beautiful.
fuck all those people who were like, Leonardo, like when's his time? Oh, he finally made it. Roger Deakins has been nominated for cinematography more than like fucking anybody. He's the best. He rules. This movie was gorgeous.
It was beautiful.
Absolutely.
I wish that geek culture would go more in this direction.
Oh yeah,
Oh boy, good luck.
Yeah, it won't.
But here's the thing. I feel like I love this. Like the look of this movie, I think it's gorgeous. Whatever, but like, is that what you're talking about? Like, you want it to be more prestigious? And
I love the fact
there should be more serious adult movies like this that rely on like subtlety and not bombast.
Sure, but I don't think that needs to apply to geek culture. I think that just needs to apply to movies in general.
I think you guys are both right.
But like, I'm
geek
just
culture,
saying,
I just don't want it to get even more like. Well, I'm a real geek. I'm a real nerd.
But I don't think
it's already like that.
We're already
It's going to get even worse if that's what you're talking
I think the place where I would disagree is that Blade Runner 2049 isn't about knowing a lot about like an extended universe.
Yeah.
Right now the problem with geek culture, and I don't want to get in it because we've got to close out, but not to get into geek, but right now like the problem with like a lot of geek movies is like people watch the movie and there's not a lot there and it's kind of dumb, but then they're like, yeah, but if you know about the comic books and the extended universe, that guy that showed up for a second, he's actually in the comics, he's really important because blah 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 blah, and he's actually the sister of
He doesn't assume gender.
you know what I mean? And
Point is, that shit doesn't matter.
It's like it's like shit that doesn't matter, just like basically bragging about knowing about a different thing. Whereas with this, everything you need is right there in the movie.
Yeah. And it's just the fact that like this movie exists and that it was even actually good is so rare. Like, it's based off of a movie that was not super successful, and it's made decades later, and yet has it's a big studio release movie with big name stars, but it had the guts to be like 2.5 hours long, rated R, very dour, wasn't punched up with a bunch of jokes, didn't have big action sequences. Like, if you walked into this movie expecting it to be an action movie, you would be very disappointed. Because it really takes its time. It was one of the best movies I've seen in forever.
So would you recommend it?
Yeah, and closing thoughts and recommendations.
God, I wish we almost should have just done a two-parter on this.
I know you love this movie so much, but
I think we'd all recommend this.
Yeah.
Having gone back and rewatching it, like I made a list of like everything that I liked about it and everything that I didn't like, and then I noticed like everything I liked, there was like 15 different items on it, and things I didn't like was just like the 2 points about like the climax at the end that like actually stuck and bothered me.
There's just I took notes and shit. I did a doodle too.
I did a doodle too.
No, I feel like I would definitely go back and put this on my top 5 list after having seen it for the second time. I wanted to catch it a second time in theaters. I wasn't able to. But
it was a great theater movie.
Even just watching it at home, like on like a high definition, like on Blu-ray with a nice TV, it's like I wish I was watching this in IMAX because the visuals are just that engrossing and striking. To the point that I would happily watch scenes of this movie, probably a good portion of it, just with the soundtrack and no dialogue.
Yeah,
like it's aesthetically perfect in a way.
Yeah.
And that is probably like the biggest thing about the movie that I personally enjoy. Like I love the characters, I love the performances. Little nitpicks about the third act, but it was much better on the second viewing.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a general consensus for all of us.
Second viewing, everything I was like kind of critical of the first time. I think a lot of my criticism comes from the fact that we're at a point where there's just these constant remakes and sequels and soft reboots and stuff, and this felt like a little bit sequel and a little bit soft reboot coming into it. But it is a sequel, but it had that vibe, and so I was like already kind of primed to be sick of it. But then like coming in, watching it the second time, a lot of the little things that I wish had been done better. I still wish were done better. I still wish there was less Harrison Ford and more of some of the other really interesting new shit the movie introduced. But at the same time, I do think it's just a great. It's what I think every director or everyone making a sequel to like an older franchise should ask themselves now. Is it gonna be like a? Is it gonna add to the movie, or is it gonna?
Is it a story worth telling, or are we just trying to revive it?
Exactly.
So much.
And this is actually a story worth telling. Kay's arc is like kind of beautiful, and the performance, and also the visuals, the character of Joy and that whole concept, even if it turns out to, I would prefer her to be more real, but just the concept of that sort of, the concept of that sort of existence and relationship is really interesting. And then I can't talk enough about her, was it Sylvia
Hoeks, I believe.
Sylvia Hoeks as Love just knocks it out of the park. And I said it before. One of her best scenes is when she's killing Robin Wright. It's just phenomenal.
Meant a lot to all of us.
Not because she's killing Robin Wright.
That's why.
I mean, I'll put this. Robin Wright is carrying a glass and she crushes it in her hand. It's so cool, guys. It's so cool. Watch this movie.
Good Lord, watch it.
And, one of the screenwriters on it was Michael Green, who also was one of the screenwriters on Logan.
Oh,
Another movie we all liked.
yeah, that was okay.
Shut your mouth. Yeah. Michael, anything you want to say that isn't stupid?
I mean, I definitely recommend it. I think that, like I said, it's like one of the best sequels ever made, and I mean, even as its own movie, it could stand on its own 2 feet.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about it.
God, this made us in none of our top 5 lists.
I know, we're all stupid.
One of the best sequels ever made.
I'm like kicking myself.
I mean, I told you.
Yeah, I purposely didn't put it on there.
I told you that it is on your top 5 list.
Yeah.
It should be there.
And I purposely left it off because I wanted to do an episode about it without talking about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that everything this movie did so right that we love about it is kind of like, I don't want to say rejected by the masses, but didn't do that well. Wasn't received so well.
Yeah.
The whole thing where it's like, we're not going to spoil the whole plot. We're going to leave a lot up to your imagination, or like a mystery to it. Everyone didn't respond to that. They actually cited that as being the reason why more people didn't want to go see the movie. It's like, oh, they didn't know what they're going to get.
Yeah. No, I remember I watched like a Watch Mojo video where they were like, oh, this was wrong because it was too long, because it was rated R, because it didn't tell you anything about the plot in the trailer.
Yeah.
And it was like...
These are all things I really like.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. We're weird.
No, we're right.
We're right, but we're apparently not.
But we're not Robin Wright.
No. Thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah. And it's like, I could have just done this as a 2-parter even. Like, there's still plenty more to talk about. So if you find me on the street and you want to fucking fight me about this, come at me.
Do it. Somebody actually fight him.
Do it. Attack me. Bring
Knock him
knives.
down a peg or two.
So guys,
because he needs it.
Who won the Super Bowl? Was it Tom Brady?
WolfPunch.